From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. During an interview with RT ahead of the Moscow Conference on International Security, Russia's Deputy Defense Minister accused the U.S. government of being behind the power outages that hit Venezuela recently. He also said that the Bolivarian armed forces are ready to deflect any attacks on their nation.
The situation in Venezuela continues to be very challenging. You are aware of recent developments, and again it is the US that is to blame. It came up with a list of enemies. Today it is Venezuela, and then it's Cuba and Nicaragua. They have ignored, or rather trampled on, international law and rules of decency. Again, the situation on the ground is very challenging. The military option is still on the table for the US, and that's been their tool of intimidation. However, the US is unlikely to benefit from the use of force. The odds are that an external attack might rally the nation behind the current government, painting a negative image of the US. Furthermore, it could ruffle the feathers of regional powers in Latin America. Anyway, the US does not sit idly and is employing other tactics, including a broad range of techniques developed for hybrid wars and color revolutions. The Americans have been training leaders and members of extremist groups. They have been ramping up pressure, including bribery, bullying, and sectoral sanctions. Operation Blackout is underway. It is a man-made shutdown of energy facilities, which is having an adverse impact on the situation, deepening the economic crisis. Our opinion is that the legitimate government of Nicolas Maduro keeps the situation under control, and the military stand ready to repel an outside attack. Russia is providing assistance, primarily under our existing defense contracts. Our specialists are helping Venezuela repair some military equipment.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State and former director of the CIA, Mike Pompeo, is bragging about the way he ran the intelligence agency. He was speaking at the Texas A&M University last week. This is what he had to say.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
The Venezuelan opposition and its allies in the U.S. government continue to set their sights on Venezuelan embassies and consular offices, seeking to take control of them. In an act of solidarity, activists projected images and messages onto the Washington, D.C. embassy, including the iconic eyes of the late President Hugo Chavez. Messages displayed also read, "No U.S. imperialism in Venezuela," and "End sanctions now."
To get a sense of what people...
The president of Bolivia is on an official visit to Argentina. On Monday, Evo Morales met with his counterpart Mauricio Macri to discuss trade, cooperation, and other topics. Our correspondent in Argentina, Edgardo Esteban, explains.
Bolivian President Evo Morales is in an official visit to Argentina. He arrived on Sunday, attending an event with thousands of Bolivian citizens outside Buenos Aires. On Monday, Morales has met with his Argentinian counterpart, Mauricio Macri. They discussed about humanitarian aid and health agreements, also focusing on the taxes the Argentinian government imposed on some Bolivian migrants to access health care. They also talked about accords related to natural gas, which include a budget of $460 million over the next 4 years. They also discussed about the construction of military planes that Argentina can sell to Bolivia. Finally, they touched upon energy agreements and about the political situation in Venezuela, as the Bolivian president has repeatedly showed his support for the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, and his government.
We thank Edgardo for that report. At least 25 people died when a passenger bus crashed in Bolivia and plunged into a ravine. President Evo Morales offered condolences to the victims' families on social media. The bus is said to have skidded on the wet road and collided with two cars before plummeting roughly 300 meters. At least a dozen people have been injured. The Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has promised his government will guarantee peace while on a visit to a city where a deadly shooting occurred last Friday. López Obrador visited the city of Minatitlan, where gunmen shot 13 people, including a child, at a bar. The motive behind the killing remains unclear, but the unidentified gunmen were reportedly looking for the owner of the bar. It is one of the worst killings since the president took office last December.
I deeply regret what happened in Minatitlan, what has also been happening in other areas. I just want to say that we are going to guarantee peace in Veracruz. That is my commitment as President of the Republic.
The Colombian Senate has started discussing the objections raised by President Iván Duque over the special jurisdiction for peace. 6 modifications were proposed by the government for a law which would allow the GEP to carry out its work. They were all denied by the lower house of Congress on April 9th. Now, the Senate has to decide on those same amendments until June 20th. This proposed law was part of the peace agreement signed between the FARC and the government to investigate and judge people who participated in the armed conflict. The first televised debate between Spain's 4 main political parties is underway ahead of the April 28th general elections. The candidates, which include the head of the Socialist Party, Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, faced each other on a Monday. Several media houses and organizations are following the debate with live fact-checking. Although not part of the debate, the newly established political party Vox is gaining momentum, making it the first time a right-wing party could enter the national parliament in Spain's history. Catalan independence, abortion, and taxes are 3 of the main topics present in the Spanish general elections campaigns. However, recent surveys suggest that the Spanish people are more concerned about the unemployment rate and corruption.
60% of Spanish people think that the unemployment rate and the lack of opportunities are the country's main problems. But what measures are the parties proposing in order to improve the situation? The right-wing Popular Party speaks about reducing corporate and income taxes, while the similarly aligned Citizens Party advocate the creation of a so-called universal contract.
We propose to end the so-called garbage contracts and to create a permanent single contract for everyone. So from the first day, people can start their jobs with the same opportunities. That way, if you are young, you don't have to face an invisible wall that blocks you from progressing and having a permanent contract, something that we're seeing right now in Spain.
For its part, the left wing has criticized the universal contract, saying it leaves workers even more unprotected. The Socialist Party proposes to reform the labor law, while the Together We Can Party talks about improving workers' negotiating position.
We have a labor market that generates precarious work and wage stagnation as a consequence of a disconnection between salaries and productivity. We need to reinforce the collective power to negotiate, which is currently broken, so that when productivity increases at a company, salaries can also rise.
One of the main policies introduced by the previous administration was the increase of the basic salary to 900 euros. The measure was branded by the right wing as an attack on job creation. However, the left wing defends the decision, and the Unidas Podemos party even proposes to increase the minimum wage to 1,200 euros.
Despite the deceit of increasing the basic salary for just 3% of workers, taxes have risen for the immense majority. That's meant that job creation in the last 3 months is less than half of what it was in the same 3 months last year. What's more, over 50,000 people have become unemployed.
The rise of basic salary has meant a 7% increase for Social Security funding.
There are 9.7 million pensioners in Spain, so the sustainability of pensions is one of the country's 5 main problems. The left wing congratulated itself for the rise in the pension budget, while the right-wing Popular Party defended itself from those who say they're trying to change the system from public to private.
Even when we were on the edge of the economic crisis, we kept the pensions and even increased the budget. But now we have to make some reforms so that current pensions, just like those in 2050 and 2060, are guaranteed.
It looks like we are prophets of doom. It looks like the pensions are a risk. They are not. And actually, the Socialist Party is committed to revaluing the pensions related to the Consumer Price Index.
The electoral campaign has failed to focus on the second most important concern of the Spanish people, corruption and fraud. Instead, the debate focuses on the Catalan situation, which less than 11% of people are worried about.
We'll take a short break now. Join us in a few. Welcome back. The president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, has participated in the 21st Workers' Union Congress in Havana. Speaking during the debate, Díaz-Canel noted that the working class citizen plays an important role in the country's defense and economy. He further highlighted the role of the labor union, which he says is to materialize workers' demands. The Congress began on Saturday and will continue until Wednesday. Former CARICOM Secretary General Sir Alistair McIntyre has died in Jamaica. McIntyre also served as Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies. He was knighted by the Queen of England in 1992 and received the prestigious Order of the Caribbean Community Medal. McIntyre was also twice honored by Jamaica's government and received the island's Order of Merit.
A number of important advances.
As regional airline Liat attempts to navigate financial turbulence, Barbados Prime Minister is holding talks with the European partners on possible funding for the Caribbean's transport sector. Mia Motley says she has started discussions with the European Investment Bank in that regard. She, however, opted not to provide details and stopped just short of mentioning Liat. Shareholder governments have been pondering the future of the airline. Liat is facing imminent closure as most shareholder countries are not responding favorably to a request for a $5.4 million bailout. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is set to become the Caribbean's most sustainable island. Headmaster at Richmond Vale Academy, Sina Hedberg, said the country will achieve this through diverse agriculture, moving away from imported fossil fuels and chemicals, and planting gardens in every village. She added that the island is leaning in solar and geothermal energy. Hedberg said over the next 10 years, a network of eco-sites will thrive and promote tourism on the island. The president of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, has rejected the so-called deal of the century with the U.S. During an Arab League meeting in Cairo, Egypt, the president said that the U.S. has nothing to offer the Palestinian people. Our correspondent in Cairo, Nayara Tardo, has the details.
The president of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, arrived in Cairo on Saturday afternoon for an urgent meeting called by the Arab League. The meeting focused on the situation in Palestine and the territories occupied by Israel. The meeting took place yesterday afternoon at the Arab League headquarters in Cairo and analyzed the need to politically and financially support Palestine. It also rejected the poorly named deal of the century proposed by the current United States administration for the Middle East, an agreement that wouldn't benefit the Palestinian people. We've seen in previous reports and from local sources that the proposal seeks to establish Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and also aims to annex the whole West Bank for Israel. It doesn't acknowledge the Palestinian refugees' right to return to their homes in Palestine. The president of Palestine announced his intention to achieve national Palestinian reconciliation despite Hamas's rejection of this internal reconciliation. Hamas has control over the Gaza Strip, while the Palestinian Authority has their base in the occupied West Bank. Also under discussion at the meeting was the need to support the Palestinian budget, as we've said earlier, through the final declaration at the Arab League meeting, which proposed to activate a security net of $100 million in order to face the challenges that the Palestinian people are facing. They also spoke of the uncertainty following the Israeli election results, which went in favor of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has pushed a campaign against the Palestinian people and has also allowed further illegal Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank, destroying Palestinian homes and forcing the displacement of Palestinians from the West Bank. As we've said, the deal of the century included the annexation of the West Bank by Israel.
We thank Nayara Tardo for that report. Former Finance Minister of Mali, Boubou Cisse, has been appointed as Prime Minister days after the government resigned. The former Prime Minister quit following fierce criticism for failing to disarm militias and stalking violence that led a massacre in which 160 Fulani herders were killed. On Sunday, unidentified gunmen raided an army base at dawn, killing at least 11 soldiers. Cholera and malaria continue to spread in Mozambique after Cyclone Idai. More than 5,000 cholera cases and over 10,000 malaria cases have so far been recorded. Charity organizations are on the ground helping affected people and fighting further outbreaks.
We deployed many international aid workers to support the response here. As it continues, the needs continue and evolve. We've deployed a field hospital to respond to some of the recent health risks, including cholera.
Ugandan police have arrested a member of parliament Robert Kyagulanyi, known by his stage name Bobby Wine. The musician turned politician was arrested on Monday on his way to a media conference where he was set to speak out on police brutality, injustice, and abuse of authority. Officers blocked the lawmaker's convoy as his supporters clashed with police, who tear-gassed the crowd. Earlier this month, Wine said he would challenge President Yoweri Museveni and run for his post in 2021. He has been arrested several times before for failing to receive authorization to carry out protests and concerts. The African Union has reissued the call for the military council in Sudan to transfer power to a transitional civilian-led political authority. During a meeting in Khartoum, the head of the African body, Moussa Faki, reaffirmed the union's commitment to ensuring a peaceful transition of power. Last week, the union gave the military 15 days to transfer power or face suspension from the bloc.
There are some differences between all parties. This needs more effort. We, as the African Union, are ready to support the Sudanese throughout this phase. God willing, they will reach an agreement which will allow for a safe transition and will allow for a civil government to govern this nation during this period, preparing an atmosphere for free and fair elections. I will prepare a report for the Peace and Security Council within the African Union about everything I have seen here in Sudan. God willing, I believe the whole continent will understand what is happening here and we will find a solution in Sudan.
Yet, protesters in Sudan are still demonstrating at the army complex, despite military leaders ordering them to dismantle their barricades. The demonstrators have accused the military council of offering no change from ousted President Omar al-Bashir. The demand to reopen roads came after protest leaders suspended talks with the military council about a civilian-led government. The Algerian interim president Abdelkader Ben Salah has called a meeting to discuss mechanisms for setting up an independent body to organize elections. Politicians, lawyers, and civil societies have gathered in the capital Algiers to negotiate prior to election preparations. The vote is scheduled to take place on July 4th, and the interim president Ben Salah is not eligible to participate.
All Algerians are concerned and seek a solution to their country. It is with these beliefs, which I and the National Liberation Front Party share, that we turn to everyone else so that we can discuss. We discuss with the press, with politicians, philosophers, all to find a solution to our country.
Countries are expected to launch a large-scale pilot test for an experimental malaria vaccine. The vaccine, called Mosquirix, will be launched in Malawi on Tuesday, followed by Kenya and Ghana next week. 120,000 people are expected to be vaccinated during the trial period. The launch follows over 3 decades of research to find a lasting solution to the disease, which kills more than 100,000 people across Africa every year. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. U.S. State Secretary Mike Pompeo has confirmed that the U.S. will enforce sanctions to countries that import oil from Iran. He also said there will be no grace period for those countries to comply. In November, the U.S. sanctioned exports of Iranian oil after President Donald Trump unilaterally pulled out of the 2015 nuclear deal.
Today, I'm announcing that we will no longer grant any exemptions. We're going to zero across the board. We will continue to enforce sanctions and monitor compliance. Any nation or entity interacting with Iran should do its diligence and err on the side of caution. The risks are simply not going to be worth the benefits.
An Israeli court has ordered a group of Jewish settlers in the West Bank city of Hebron to move out of a Palestinian-owned home that they illegally occupied. According to court records, the settlers grabbed the house using forged documents almost 20 years ago. The settlers were also ordered to pay the Palestinian family $160,000 in damages. In other news, the death toll has risen to almost 300 in Sri Lanka after 8 bombs exploded in the city of Colombo on a Sunday. More than 500 people have been injured, leaving many disabled. Police have arrested 24 people in a series of raids. The government has extended sympathy to the victims of the blast and has ordered compensation to their families.
For everybody who died, as the compensation, to the families, 1 million, and also that for those who are injured, and according to their injuries, from 100,000 rupees to 300,000 rupees to be paid, and also all the churches damaged to be completely repaired and renovated by the government expense.
Meanwhile, a state of emergency has been declared by the Sri Lankan government following the deadly attacks. Government has blamed the armed group, Islamist group, National Tawheed Jamaat, though no one has claimed responsibility for the bombings. At least 5 people died when a magnitude 6.3 earthquake struck the Philippines in the island of Luzon. Terrified locals ran into the streets of the capital, Manila, as the quake sent skyscrapers swaying. The local media reported some structures had collapsed, and the Clark International Airport, a former U.S. military base, suffered some damage and had closed. The 8th edition of Venezuela's Theater Festival has come to an end. Called Scenario of Peace, it had more than 400 activities and the participation of 8 other countries.
Venezuela served as a platform for cultural exchange. For 10 days, various national and international groups show their artistic skills on stage.
This has always been a platform to show the customs of not only Venezuelans, but from other countries as well. The most important thing is that we are showing different ways to spread our message. We all learn from each other, and it's something that Venezuela and mainly Caracas can be proud of.
Performing arts took a leading role in the streets, communities, and theater rooms of the capital, in a festival that achieved great recognition despite the difficult situation of this South American nation.
We have showcased displays and it has all been good, because people can distract themselves from the many issues that have happened in the country.
During the course of this event, various genres were showcased, such as comedy, drama, magic shows, and fiction, all with the purpose of entertaining the Venezuelan people.
Our constitution considers culture as a right. Cultural spaces and recreation are a right for all Venezuelans. These activities are good for all kids, so that they can take part in creative endeavors. It is also a space for peace, a space for coexistence.
The repertoire of theater companies from Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Spain, Mexico, and Venezuela made the unity of people a reality. During the 8th edition of the International Theater Festival, Venezuelan actor and puppeteer José León was honored for his over 50 years in the art world.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.